Hey everyone, welcome to season 5, episode 3 of the Overseas Famous podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Owens. I'm joined by Tamir Goodman, one of the premier players who came in the same time period I did. I remember you very vividly because we're around the same age. I remember the Sports Illustrated. I remember all of that and just being like, this is so cool. So it's really cool to be able to sit down and talk to you all these years later, now that we're both retired and kind of out of off the court and doing other ventures right now. But it's fun to talk to you because I definitely followed you from when I was in high school at that age as well. So Tamir, welcome to the show. We're psyched to have you today.
Thankful to be here, and thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, of course. So let's go right into the Aviv net, which is you're an entrepreneur. Once you've gotten done basketball, you've taken on this new venture and you've created the Aviv net. Let's take us through that. Tell us what the Aviv net is and how that's revolutionizing basketball.
Well, I've been front office here now in Jerusalem for Paul Jerusalem. It's a professional team in Jerusalem for this is my 9th season. And during the pandemic, we got an email from the Basketball Association that said we can no longer pass a basketball in practice. Every player needs to have their own ball because there's bacteria on the ball. And if you pass the ball, you could play players sick or make the referee sick. And we actually know a ref that got sick. So I was like, well, why don't, we've updated every other part of the game, but we've been using the same net for so long. Why don't we create a net that disinfects the ball every time you make a shot and then also dries it from sweat, because basketball players have been playing with like a sweaty, gross ball for far too long. So I hustled around for a year until we got it right. And thank God now we have the first ever moisture wicking and antimicrobial basketball net. And then we also have like this advertising component on it where you could customize your net, put your own logo on there or sponsors logos on there. So it's kind of changed it basketball from the player's perspective in that it allows you to perform better and keep you safer, but also from like a marketing perspective, you could increase your team spirit or sell that space because it's great real estate. We just closed with one of the bigger banks in Israel that's going to be featured in our net in our home games at Apollo Jerusalem, because every time there's an instant replay or every time like there's a good picture of like a dunk or something, your company's logo is going to be like right on the net. So you could take the logo on and off. It's in-game memorabilia. You could give it to the sponsors of the MVP after the game, so they have in-game memorabilia. And it's a really fun project, but like I guess the more you understand basketball, the more you appreciate how much this net is doing for your team and your players.
When I first, I remember a few. I guess when you first came out with this, we followed each other, and I remember looking and just being like, "This is a great idea," especially during the pandemic, because there was so much. How do we? I think the biggest thing was how do we get players to play? How do we get players back on the court safely? How do we get referees back on the court safely? And that thought process, and that's what really good entrepreneurs do. They find a problem and they see something like you said, which was incredible, and it's something I never even thought about. It's like we've been using everything in basketball has been revolutionized, changed uniforms, everything, but the net's just like, oh yeah, that's the same thing. Like nothing, like the backboards have changed, the how the rim handles contact. The net's like, nah, same old for years. That's a crazy thing to look at and be like, huh, that's interesting that's still there and everything else is different.
Yeah, well, about 8 or 10 years ago, I invented my first basketball product. Unfortunately, it got stolen from me. But I did manage to get it to market. I did manage to get NBA sales. And, I've been down this road. But after it got stolen from me, I just thought, like, I'm never doing this again. It's not worth it. You patent it, you invest everything you got in it, and then a big company could just steal it overnight. So I never thought I was going to do something again, but in the pandemic, I just had to face my fears and pick myself up and say, I'm going to give it one more shot. And thank God this time around, I've got the right team and it's gone much better. And we've signed with Dick's Sporting Goods nationwide. So it's going pretty well.
Wow. I think that's such a great lesson to entrepreneurs, because when I think of overseas athletes and when I think of just athletes in general, I think the next step, there's like 3 avenues. It's like, okay, what did my, what networks do I already have? Like what people do I already know? where I can get a job. It's like, okay, let me go into basketball where I'm, coaching or doing something with basketball. And then the last avenue is entrepreneurship. And that's always the toughest one, I feel like, because you really have to have that commitment and the knowledge and all of these different traits that a lot of overseas players do. But to sit down and create, and not only create but get back up when things don't go right is such an attribute that is just lost in this world, because people, things go wrong. Look at COVID, like things went wrong and it's like shut down. You see guys, shut down if things don't go right with a contract. I think just your message is very strong, and I'm appreciative of what you've done and being able to bounce back. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, thank you. Like you said, I came over here to play internationally. I think you can't just be a good player to play overseas and make it. You need to be able to be very out of your comfort zone, because so many things happen culturally, on the court, off the court. Every single thing is different. Contracts are different. Coaches are different. Agents are different. Players are different. The system's different. Everything's different. So unless you're someone that could really pick themselves up, it's going to be very hard to have a long career overseas. I've managed, thank God, to play 7 years professionally, and now I've been front office for 9 years. And I see the players that make a good career over here are the players that have that specific attribute of being able to pick themselves up, because you're completely out of your comfort zone. It's totally different than America here and everywhere overseas.
So getting into the Israeli basketball league, you have one of the best leagues in the world, hands down. The league is top. Like, if you're an American and you find out about playing overseas, I feel like that's the question I'm asked the most. It's like, oh yeah, I played overseas, and the first thing people say, where Israel? Because it's such a huge league, everyone knows about it. How did that come to be? Where this league with a national, with like good players, but when you look at, like, comparatively to the Spains, who are like one of the top leagues in the world, and the Frances and things like that, how did Israel become this powerhouse league where it became what it has, and it's drawing the best athletes from all over the world?
Yeah, I think it's because Israel is so small. It's only about 9 miles long, so yeah. You have about 14 top teams that everybody is so close to each other, meaning you have 4 Americans playing on your team in Jerusalem. You have 4 American players playing in Tel Aviv, which is only 30-minute train right away. And then in between there's 2 other teams, Hulon, Rishon LeZion. So right there, you already have like 12 friends, or, 16 friends, American friends, that you could have a great, social life with here. The weather's great. Everybody speaks English. It's a very modern state. The technology is unbelievable here. And it's not like if you play in one of these other countries, you're going to have to drive 8 hours just to see another American that's not your teammate. And it can get very lonely, and it's cold. And, the weather is amazing in Israel. You're surrounded by beaches. And why would you not want to play here? Everybody loves the food. They love the weather. The people are very, very nice. And it's become very sought after place to play outside of the NBA, for sure. And also the NBA, like, I cannot tell you there's always GMs here. Always. NBA is always here. They're always watching what's going on in Israel. So there's a very strong chance you're going to get a chance to get called up.
That is, I've always noticed that, and you just gave a perfect statement as to why Israel is such a great place to play. And those things you just said, like 9 miles wide, like, it's something I really never even thought of. And I know people, you trust me, my fiance, she's just like, if you pointed like Maryland out in the map, she'd be like, what's that? So I'm very, very, I've studied, history. I know, so I've never even noticed that was like 9 miles, that's it. And it's such a small place, but, such a powerful history, powerful, leagues. It's really interesting to hear you talk about that.
Israel was actually, before the bubble, Israel was the first league to come back during the pandemic and didn't even have one issue, and can finish the season more before any other professional team in the world. Israel is a very problem-solving nation, very forward-thinking place. Everybody in Israel has to go to the army. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, I did know that. Yeah.
The boys and the girls. So basically what happens is like your teens grow up with like a community first attitude instead of me first, because they know they're going to have to give back. So when they're 15, 16, 17, it's not like, hey, where am I going to college? Hey, what am I doing? It's like, okay, what unit am I going to be in? Like, where am I going to give back? And
Uh-huh.
that's why when the pandemic hit here, within 24 hours, they already had 2 apps going. One app for elderly people to bring them their medicines, like all done, like anywhere throughout Israel, and one app for elderly people to get food delivered to their house without having to leave their house. They were both set up within 24 hours. So it's just that type of problems. That's why they call it Startup Nation. Like it's just like a really problem solving place.
That's incredible. I remember the Army thing just because Tom Kaplan, who was from Israel, played at Monmouth with me, and that he was older because he had done his service in Israel before he came to America to play. So I remember just having conversations with him, and as an American kid, you don't think about that. You don't think about that service. And then I in Korea, it was the same thing. There was guys. We had a good point guard, and they're like, "Oh, he can't play next year. He has to go do his service." And I was like, "Wow, it's." You realize like what Americans take for granted, and it really shows how other nations really step up to help each other out and be a good voice to be a community. And that's what I think Israel is. It's a community. It's a great community where people care.
Yeah, I mean, thank God now we have 5. My wife and I have been blessed with 5 children, and I wouldn't want to raise them anywhere else in the world because I see the childhood they have. It's kind of like what we had when we were growing up, meaning if you go to a playground, even today, any day, until about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, there's going to be tons and tons of kids, soccer, basketball, playing on the playground, and no parents. No parents. It's completely safe. As soon as it gets a little bit dark, kids go home. If my daughters have gymnastics, whatever, first, second, third grade, they walk to gymnastics themselves and come home when gymnastics is over, or they take a bus by themselves. And it's completely normal because it's a community first country. It's the same thing. And so they have independence, they have freedom, you get to feel a real childhood in America. It's not like your parents need to hover over you every single second.
Yep.
And guys come over in the summer. I bring a lot of NBA players over in the summer to my camp and stuff, and that's all. They all leave the same way. They can't believe their eyes, and it's sad for them. It makes them feel sad that their kids can't really have the same thing in America anymore.
Yeah, it's true. And funny story. I mean, I always say on the podcast, I'm like, if I'm drinking coffee, that I'm talking to someone who's not living in America, because it's early here. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here. But so I'm drinking coffee. But just thinking about that, I have to go to, ironically, a soccer tournament from like the start from 9:30 to like 5 o'clock today. So talking about that aspect of raising children. You have 5 children. I've one, but having that aspect of being in a soccer tournament all day, it's fun. But yeah, I definitely it's definitely an exhausting day when you really when the activities pick up.
I think at the end of the day, your kids, you could almost let them know that you trust them more.
Yeah.
You could give them that feeling, and it picks them up. And I think that's why it's one of the reasons why a lot of overseas players could come over to the NBA and they're not intimidated.
Yeah.
And they can be successful right away because they've had to be much more independent at a much younger age in a lot of countries overseas, basically.
Yeah, you're right. I think that shapes you. It shapes you. It shapes who you are.
Right. And like I'm looking at my one of my sons, he's 15, he plays, so there's no college basketball here. It's the pro leagues run all the youth. So by the time you're 16 or 17, you're already training with the pro team. So your mindset is like every game matters, every practice matters because you're around pros. You're not around. So it develops your professionalism on the court, and just being around a country where you have to make the right decisions and be independent at a younger age. So when they come over to America, a lot of times they're more prepared.
When you talk about some of these, Omri Caspi, a player from, Israel who comes over and same thing, makes such a good, big impact in the NBA because of those traits that you just described. he wasn't intimidated, walked right on the court and was just like, I'm a rookie, I'm going at you. I've done this before. And that's what I don't think other people understand. When you go through college here, it's a different animal. It's a different animal than it is overseas.
It's different. I mean, just for Caspy, specifically, like, so he grew up down south. So like
Uh-huh.
he grew up with F-16s, flying over his head, with a lot of rockets and things like that. So like it's just he comes from a different mentality. He's seen a lot in life. And number two is he played for Maccabi Tel Aviv. I think he was like 17. And like Maccabi Tel Aviv, the pressure to win there every single game it's a Super Bowl every night. So by the time you got to the NBA, you now have 82 games, or regular season, whereas like he's used to playing like 50 games, 60 games, where every single game is a Super Bowl. It means so much. So by the time he got to like training camp in America, he wasn't intimidated. He just wasn't, because A, his background where he grew up, and B, his professional basketball experience. So it's yeah, that's the
Why do
way
you
it is, man.
why do you think that is? Why do you think, because you're extremely right. The pressures of overseas, and it really is, every game matters so much. Why do you think that mentality exists there and not here?
Because it's less money and less games, and guys are sending their checks home to their wife. Like it's if you're making 200, 300 grand, and this is your shot. This is your shot. You're not making $10 million a year. It's like you got to stay and play and win. Because they're good. If you get cut, you have to win. Basically, you have to win. Like this is the way you're providing for your family, like right here and right now. And I think that's why the games are like that. And there's less games. You only play twice a week. In the NBA, a lot of times you're playing 3 times a week. So
Mm-hmm.
when we were growing up in America, and I love America, I love American basketball. I just experienced it all. I did ABCD camp, I did Nike camp, I did NBA, I did all that. You're playing so much, you're just changing uniform a lot of times. Like in the summertime, I just like here I'm playing, then I'm playing 3 games a day almost. Whereas like I'm looking at my 15-year-old now, it's like he's got like a nutritionist, they got a weight program, they got a mental sports psychologist working with them. Their practice, I went to their practice last week. It was like a college, it was like they're 15. It's like they sprint from drill to drill. Like there's no talking. You listen to the coach. Like it's just like they're really prepared. It's just, I guess because there's less opportunities. Maybe in America, you're just like constantly playing, constantly playing, There's tournaments, thousands of tournaments, thousands of coaches, thousands of opportunities, and it's just a lot. Everything's a lot less here. I forget it. Like when I go back to America, like I walk into the Walmart or Target, and you're just like, I'm like, wow, there's like so much. America is just like loaded. Like,
Uh-huh.
you're not going to have like 500 deodorants to choose from in Israel. You got a couple of options. You work with what you have, or like everything in America, it's like, it's just different. It's just a different mentality. There's so many opportunities in America. I think there's less overseas, and you got to make the most of it, basically.
That's the switching of the uniforms really resonates, because that's exactly what it is. I feel like you articulated that problem of what the major issues with basketball is, because even guys are, and I feel like we're starting to be the old people, like yelling get off our lawn, but like the guys who are my age, our age, you're starting to look back at what the NBA now is, and I can hear people's comments like, oh, these guys don't have any basketball IQ. Like they're so athletic. They're just doing things, but when something happens where it needs to be stopped, like there's no counter, there's no this, there's no this. There's a lot of good movement, but there's not a lot of good thought process. And I think you just kind of articulated a major reason why that is because you're spending more time just changing uniforms going, as opposed to like working on the mental aspect of basketball.
Right. And like you also said, the players nowadays, you look at John Morant, you look at these players, their skill level is, they could almost rely on athleticism and skill, because the players who make it now are so incredibly talented. It's hard to even imagine. They're just moving their bodies in a different way that we couldn't even think about. It's just like everything else in life progresses. Like, let's say Dominique did a windmill, so then the next generation is going to do like a double-handed windmill reverse, and the third generation is going to put it between their leg and still manage. It's just like everything gets built on and built on and built on, and now you're watching the culmination of like the combination of all these moves and movements. And it's like back in the 80s, 90s, someone could do like a Euro step. Now these kids could do like a Euro step, finished left hand, high off the glass, off their left foot, like just insane movements. And it's really fascinating to watch. But that's what they rely on, because they're just that good and that athletic and that quick.
I remember having the poster and watching Jordan in that dunk contest when he jumped on the foul line and being like, there's nothing like this that will ever exist ever.
Right.
And now it's like, that's like a 4.
Yeah,
like,
people are like, kids are like windmilling from the free throw line now. I saw somebody do a windmill the other day. Yeah. So, unbelievable.
Yeah. Your commitment to becoming a great basketball player, it's intense. You think about how hard we have to work to get to that level, but on top of that, as an Orthodox Jewish human being, male, you are able to take on both of those roles and be successful, which I think is just such a high point, because the total commitment needed for both of those things is very high, and you were able to succeed with that. Why was that? Why were you able to be successful with two aspects of your life so devoted?
Wow. Thank you. Well, first of all, it was always one thing. It wasn't two things. I think that was the answer. Judaism helped me be a better basketball player. First of all, my grandmother, who only passed away 3 years ago, was one of the oldest Holocaust survivors in the world. She survived the camps for 4 years. Not many people could say that. She was in Bergen-Belsen, and she lived with us most of the year. So I got to live with like a real hero, a superhero, that was just when I tell you, like, she got stripped away from her parents and her parents got burnt, she lost her entire family, like in the gas chambers, everything. And she never took a smile off her face. Did she forget what happened? No, she didn't forget what happened. Of course she knew what happened, but she chose to live a happy life. She chose to live a life of giving and a life of kindness and a life of faith. And just growing up around her, it just inspired all of us to like unite the physical with the spiritual, which was all Judaism is about. So you could be a basketball player, but try to play with the right reasons, try to unite people, kick to your daily schedule. And it helps you be a better player, because it's like, it's all mindfulness. Like in Judaism, like you don't just eat because you're hungry, you eat, to help you have energy to serve God. So that's what you need for basketball. You pray 3 times a day. Why do you pray 3 times a day the same exact prayer? Like, come on, we say the same words every single day. Like, isn't that boring? Does God really need you to say the same words every day? Well, no, it's commitment. God is teaching you that, like, just you want to be a great shooter, you got to shoot over and over and over and over again. Consistency, same way, the right way, get better, improve every day. Like that, everything lends itself. The religion and basketball were seamlessly one for me. Playing for a higher purpose was like great for me. All the media attention, it wasn't about me. It was about doing something, not just for my ego, but for something, bigger than myself. And that allowed me to always move forward during the good times and the bad times. So my faith wasn't separate than the basketball. It was like the greatest thing for basketball, in my opinion. Now, is it hard to practice on a fast day without eating and drinking? It's hard. Sometimes I had to get off the team bus and walk because the Sabbath was starting. I probably could have had a national championship at Maryland if I would have been willing to play on the Sabbath. Like there comes like decisions that you have to make. But I think if you know who you are, it's easier to make decisions sometimes. It's almost like they say, like a tree that's like deeply rooted can't really get knocked over as easily as like, if you have strong roots, it's easier to make decisions, and also easier to help people because you know who you are more. It's like you don't sway with the wind. It's like, here's who I am and here's how I could help you. And because I know who I am, I'm not jealous of you. I don't want to like, I don't have like I don't want to ever feel like I need to get back at anybody. I don't feel like I need to like prove anything to anybody. I'm just here unconditionally to help you, and I'm not judgmental. I have a lot of unconditional love. It's all comes from faith. So these are all things that, listening, paying attention. These are all like religious things that I think really helped with basketball.
The I mean, you hit on it. You went to Maryland and ended up transferring to Towson. What was it about Towson that Maryland didn't provide in terms of, working with you through through your faith?
Well, I just love that coach called me up and he said, look, the guys on the team aren't Jewish. Nobody here is Jewish, but they respect you. They read about what happened at Maryland. They asked me to come recruit you. So can we learn more about your religion? And then I sat with the coach and we went over all the schedule and when the Sabbath begins and ends. And he's like, let me see what I could do. And he got the schedule changed. I think until today, I'm the only person to ever do that in Division I basketball, get a scholarship. And it was seen as impossible because of the basketball community at Towson. I was able to live out my dream, and I'm 40 today. And there isn't one day that goes by that I don't say, thank God that was a miracle. And I'm forever grateful to them. And, the cool thing is I graduated from a Christian high school, predominantly African-American, even though I'm Jewish. I roomed with a Muslim player at Towson, till today, one of my closest friends. And just basketball is the coolest part about basketball is the relationships I don't think there's any other platform in the world that has proven itself to bring people together more than basketball, because basketball only think two things matter. Like, can you play and are you respectful? Do you respect the game? Do you respect your teammates? If you have those two things, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you're going to have relationships for the rest of your life. And that's like a big part of my life now. And I'm glad I got to experience it and hopefully now pass it on.
I think basketball players in general, because we have one of the few sports where it's very global. The football it's people watch it, follow it, obviously in other countries, but baseball, same thing. I mean, I was at the Phillies game last night, so I'm following hardcore with baseball, but basketball is that one where it's just completely global, and you really do make those relationships. When I try to explain to someone about playing overseas and playing professional basketball around the world, you really understand culture so much better than you would if you just played in the NFL or something like that. I think even NBA guys who spend a lot of their time there and then head overseas, you really do get that appreciation for the world, appreciation for other cultures, and appreciation for learning other languages and learning about, the differences between people and how those differences aren't really different and how they can help you build relationships in the future. I think it's one of the few places where you have that ability, and a few jobs where you have that ability and you come out a completely different person when you started.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. The more diverse we are, the more we realize how one we really are, how much we really are in common. And it's such a beautiful thing. I love that I have friends from all over the world, all different faiths, all different backgrounds. It's really awesome. It's probably like the coolest thing. I love it.
Well, I'd love to. I mean, just because there's been quotes you said, like, people have told you, like, whoever's going to accommodate you, and you realize that when people have appreciation and people have that love for the game, people will work with you, especially if you can bring something, not only basketball wise, but mentally and to a team. I think that's really cool. So the Towson experience, you go to Towson, you're able to get that schedule shifted, and you end up having an incredible, terrific career. Did that, when you were at Towson, I mean, obviously you're originally from the Baltimore area, so
Right.
was that a lot easier when you were kind of close to everything?
It was a lot easier because that 20 years ago, it was a lot harder to keep kosher, much harder. Today, you could almost go into any Walmart or Target anywhere in America and find kosher products. It's unbelievable. It's something that, like, if you would have told me that 20 years ago, it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. So I still had to be close to home, and that, like, my mom would like restock me with kosher food, meet us at the airport, like in between away games, or, and like the food issue was like, I kind of needed to be close to home. So that was very helpful. Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is the food. Yeah. It's much easier now though. Like I went to Auburn and stuff, and I'm in Auburn, Alabama. there's like almost zero Jews here, and yet I was able to go to a local Target and find bread that was kosher. Like, it's fascinating. It's amazing what's going on in America. It's incredible.
That's great.
Yeah.
So when you were young, you were labeled. They said the Jewish Jordan. That was not a label that you created. It was created by the media. Were you ever just like, oh Jesus Christ? Like, were you ever sorry? Like, were you ever like, oh my God, here we go? Like, this is, or were you just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna embrace this? Was that a
Yeah,
tough thing? Because
I
I'm thinking,
never, yeah, I never felt comfortable with it. I never felt comfortable. I'm just not that type of person. I'm much like being a easy, like, private family person. And here I am. There was one time where I had 700 media requests in 1 week.
wow.
So there is a concept in Judaism that says, like, sometimes you do have to step out of your comfort zone. So I got that, but like I said earlier, it's more about, like, it wasn't about me. It was about something bigger than myself. Like, how can I use the Jewish Jordan to maybe inspire a kid out there that's like embarrassed of their faith or their culture? How can I
Mm-hmm.
use it to, like, unite people? Like, how can I use it to, like, a bigger thing than just my ego? That's like a big concept that's always made sense to me, and that kind of helped me get through it. And it's another thing that I think about all the time when I talk to young players. It's like there's this whole world of basketball where it's like, hey, this person said I'm not good. All my energy is going to prove that guy wrong, or prove them wrong. Like, I'm going to show you how good I am. You don't know how good I am, right? And I always say, like, if you do that, then your energy is like in a negative vibe, but B, it's like you're only proving yourself up until that person's ego. Whereas if you're going after your inner potential and what God sees in you, it's all the way up here. So why not, like, focus your energy in, like, what God sees in you, which is, like, all the way here, instead of, like, putting all your energy and proving someone else wrong, which is, like, maybe at this height or this height.
Yeah,
It's what happens if once you prove that guy wrong. Now what? Like, where are you going now? Right? You're
yeah.
stuck. So, I never tried to, like, show everyone, hey, I'm the Jewish Jordan. This is it. This is where it's going. It just, that type of thought process never really, not who I ever was. I guess because of the way that I grew up. So yeah, it wasn't who I was, but I had to pick myself up and try to embrace it for something bigger than myself, instead of just my own ego. Because then I would have definitely crashed. There's no way I would have been able to, like, go through all that.
The trash talking because of your faith, because you're such a kind human being, but because you had that hype, I can imagine that people were saying things to you and talking trash. Was that something that you were just that ever annoy you, or were you just blocking that out?
Yeah, I was able to just play through things. I was definitely able to just play, and many times, even if some things were like, there was one game I'm not going to mention the team, but we played against an SEC team in college, and there wasn't a lot. It was not a Jewish area. I could just tell you
Yeah.
that. They were, making fun of my kippah the whole night. They were singing a
Mm,
chant like, "Where did number 22 get his hat from? The rabbi, the rabbi." They were just going on about it, and I didn't say anything. I just kept playing and playing. And at the end of the game, they were waiting for me at the team bus, at our bus, and I wanted to get on the bus. They blocked the bus. They didn't let me get on the bus. And for like a second, I was nervous. I'm like, hey, I was thinking you guys were making fun of me the whole night. Why don't you just at least let me get on the bus? And then they stopped me and they said, hey, you know what? We just want to shake your hand. And I'm like, shake my hand? You were like, on me all night long. And they're like, yeah, we respect that. Even though we made fun of you, you never took the hat off, congratulations. So that happened a lot. Like, even if there was like anti-Semitism or whatever, a lot of times it ended up turning into something positive if you just stay positive, I guess.
yeah.
I think that's the best way to do it.
Ryan Terrell just got drafted in the G League last night. I know you guys obviously communicate and talk. The his label is the same. They're relabeling him, and a lot of comparisons between the two. Uh, Being that OG now, what advice would you have for Ryan going into the G League, where he's going to have to face similar turmoil that you had to?
Yeah, well, I think in a certain way, the millennial generation has brought a great awareness to cultural sensitivity and respecting others. I think the world is much more advanced now in that sense, in a lot of ways. So I think he is going to be embraced which is makes me really happy. I even just watching the tweets of the team and everything, and like welcoming him to the community and things like that. So I think the world's a little bit more ready now. And I would tell him to just keep doing what he's doing. Listen, pay attention, be resilient, be on time, just do everything that he's doing. Work hard, enjoy the ride, be proud of who you are, respect others, and just try to enjoy it and everyone's like, we live in a society that's, we're always rushing to the next thing. I think sometimes it's like, good, enjoy. Hey man, I'm at practice today. I'm playing professional basketball in Detroit. Like, this is awesome. Like, enjoy the ride. Sometimes we forget to enjoy the ride.
How often are you able to get back to the United States, the Baltimore area? Is that something that you guys do regularly? Does your family,
Right.
to kind of see? Because I always think about, like, how is my child going to see who I was? So do you ever take
Right.
them back? Is that something that you?
We do. I'm much more now since after the pandemic. There was a while where like 4 or 5 years where I didn't really go back. But now, because of the net and our relationship with Dick's Sporting Goods, and I signed a movie deal, I have a new book coming out, and my kids are getting older. So I find myself, well, yeah, by February, I've gone in August, I'm going in December, I'm going yeah, I go like every 2 to 3 months now
That's
because of
great.
everything that got going on. But before that, I was kind of just here. I think yeah, the pandemic like changed a lot. The net changed a lot for me in my life.
That's great. That's really cool. A movie deal, a book. This is great.
Yeah, yeah. The movie deal, really excited. Great producer. The same team who did the Kevin Garnett doc.
Oh, nice.
I'm very excited about that. And I'm also very, very dyslexic. Very dyslexic. So I wrote a children's book about being a dyslexic basketball player, kind
Wow.
of to inspire kids that have learning challenges to not make themselves feel like a victim,
Yes.
because whatever challenge you have, there's some hidden blessing you have that other people don't have because of your challenge,
Yeah.
and just try to empower them. I think that's like a big deal, because I barely passed my SATs, but then when I got to Towson, I made Dean's List. So it doesn't really mean anything. These terms, the way they coin you, and a lot of kids, when they find out they have a learning challenge, they find out they're dyslexic, they start crying, feel down about themselves. They feel like, but it's not really like that. So try to empower them through this book. I'm really excited about it. It's coming out in the spring.
That's really incredible. Just because that resonates with me. I grew up with severe ADHD, and it was just a struggle, and I still struggle with it to this day. And where something will distract me for a second, and I'm like, wait, what was I saying? I did an interview, and the guy asked me like a two-part question. I was like, shoot, I don't understand. I can't remember what he said in the first part. So it was just kind of like humming and hawing for a little bit. And it's one of those things where you just lose focus. So when I wrote my book, that was the biggest struggle. I was just had to lock myself away. And anytime I was distracted, I was like, wait, where was I at? Where was I at? And I just it was like I can't remember the name of the movie. The guy's writing all over his body, because I was just like, okay, I have an idea. I need to write it down right now. And I would just pull out my phone
Right.
and just like talk into it. I think it's just crazy, but I think what you're doing, bringing light to that is wild, because that sits with me really deeply, because that's something that I struggle with. So having that connection to see that you also struggled but were able to overcome is really good, and inspiration for young athletes and young people everywhere who struggle with those different things. And everyone thinks our lives are like this perfect thing, or everyone thinks if we're not getting good grades, it's because we're being lazy and we're only focusing on basketball. It is great to hear other people share their story where, okay, listen, I have this issue where I struggled with this because this is how I was born, and now I have to figure it out. So it's really great to hear that other people had this struggle as well, and you kind of connect over that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think, yes, like you said, maybe back in the day, we maybe would tend to keep some of these things quiet. But one of the things the millennial generation is, it's okay to talk about things. It inspires other people. It's healthy and it's good, and it unites people. It's very hard for me to inspire someone if they think my life is perfect, or it's much easier to relate to people and say, hey, I'm struggling with dyslexia. Maybe you have dyslexia. We're more likely to help each other because we understand each other. We relate it much more than, if you think someone's life is perfect and they're telling you what to do, it's like, okay, you can't resonate with like what I'm going through. So I agree.
Where's the future of your entrepreneurial life going? What's in the future for you besides the net?
Yeah, so I would say three things. The net, like the moisture wicking and antimicrobial like component, it's going really well. Everyone loves that. But we're in about 2 weeks having our first pro in-game game where a major bank is going to be featured live, on the net, like with the logo.
Yeah.
And right now that sounds like a crazy idea, but I really hope that soon having something on the net, a logo on the net, is going to be like acceptable in leagues all over, especially overseas where like it could help make more money for the team. It's hard for teams overseas to make money. They just don't have the TV deals, the sponsorship deals. And if this could help a team, land another sponsor, that would be great. And then the players could get more money too. The team's making more money, right?
Yeah.
So I really want that to become standard. I want to relaunch my Zone 190 after what happened to me. I'm ready to do that. The company signed off that they won't do it anymore, and all that's kind of stopped. So I could relaunch it now. And then my favorite thing, I'm proud of anything, is helping other startups. Helping. Thank God I've been blessed with a lot of relationships, like you spoke about earlier on. A lot of people who I played with are now GMs, are now front office executives, or they work at the NBA HQ and things like that. So, I have a lot of good relationships, and I could help people through like a phone call, basically, a lot of times. So I like doing that too, kind of being an advisor or consultant for a lot of other companies.
That's great. Well, Tamir, I really appreciate your time hopping on the podcast today, sharing your story. I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of this, a lot out of your story, and a lot out of your journey. And we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for thinking of me, and God bless you and your family and everybody in America. And please send my love. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamir.
All right.
Appreciate it. Tamir Goodman, Overseas Famous podcast. Lots of fun. Really shared some important stuff. Usually I shut the interview down after this, but I felt like I almost wanted to just take a second and just think about a lot of the things that Tamir said. I thought that was very important. I thought what he was talking about was very important. Tamir Goodman, the Overseas Famous podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe on all our things. We'll put them on the screen for YouTube, but obviously go to iTunes, subscribe to Overseas Famous. Go to YouTube, subscribe to Overseas Famous. Follow us at Overseas Famous on Instagram and Twitter. And we'll see you guys next time on the Overseas Famous podcast.